approach to any football ground evokes a gut feeling which is as easy to recognise as it is hard to describe. Each and every club has its own special character and identity, and some of the great ones have the most humble origins. It was underneath this lamppost in the Tottenham High Road, just 100 yards or so from where the ground stands today, that in September 1882, a group of young members of the Hotspur Cricket Club met to form a football section. What's in a name, you might ask? Well, in this case, quite a lot. The boys' imagination had been captured by the legendary deeds of one Harry Hotspur, immortalised in Shakespeare, but in real life, Sir Henry Percy, a member of the wealthy Northumberland family who at that time owned large parts of North London. So the new football club, looking for a dash of style towards the end of the 19th century, forsook the familiar town, United or City, and called themselves Tottenham Hotspur, not knowing then that the aristocratic ring of the name was to manifest itself in the stylish football the club was to play in the next 100 years.
A group of very good players. Good, I mean by good by their willingness to be not taught but advised.
Really, the thing that changed it completely was the buying of players like White and Mackay and Bill Brown, and later on, of course, Jimmy Greaves. They were the men that really changed everything.
I love it that Tottenham's got this tradition, and that we've got to keep to this tradition of being a really good footballing outfit.
You know, when you're at a club like Tottenham, they expect you to win all the time, and rightly so. You know, it's the best club in the country as far as I'm concerned.
The first ever Tottenham team played their football on a patch of public marshland, moving to the site of their present ground in 1899. 2 years later, as a Southern League club, they won the FA Cup. Spurs drew 2-2 with Sheffield United at Crystal Palace, Scotsman Sandy Brown scoring both Tottenham's goals. He got another in the replay at Bolton, where Spurs won 3-1, starting a habit of winning a trophy when there was a 1 at the end of the year. This priceless copy of the Tottenham programme marked their opening Football League match, played in September 1908. Wolves were the opposition, Spurs won 3-0, and their first goal in league football was scored by the illustrious Vivian Woodward, a director of the club as well as a brilliant amateur player. Wolves were the opposition again on Tottenham's next day of celebration. The venue for the FA Cup final of 1921 was Stamford Bridge, and the only goal of the match was scored for Spurs by their 20-year-old outside left, Jimmy Dimmock.
I was at that match with my father, and I was rolled over all the people's heads horizontally down onto the fence round the ground, as were a lot of other boys. This wasn't unique. It is what happened when there was a large crowd and little boys couldn't see very much.
That day they saw Spurs captain Arthur Grimsdale receive the cup from the King. Rowe himself became a stylish centre-half for Spurs during the 30s, and when he returned to Tottenham as manager in 1949, he had a lively team. The classic Welsh wing half, Ron Burgess, was captain and led Spurs to the championship of the second and first divisions in consecutive years, in 1950 and 1951. Spurs' signature tune then was McNamara's Band, and their tactics were known as push and run.
The push and run, you had a few didn't understand what you were talking about, you know, which is easy to tell from me now. But we trained in a car park, and when it was dry and that, and I used to give them a ball and trying to pass the ball, kick the ball into the wall, run forward and get the pick up with his turn, do it again, you know. I said, now look, that's easy, isn't it? So we'll stick a player there, and when he passes the ball, you'll find out it's just as easy. And it's just as easy on the field if you believe it's easy and if you do what you're doing now.
Simplicity on the field, combined with good-natured camaraderie on the terraces, made the early 50s a memorable time for watching football. White Hart Lane, like many other packed grounds at that time, was a good place to be.
Sunderland in striped shirts kicked off and went away in promising style. It was the visitors, in fact, who opened the score when Davis, their centre-forward, got one in. This evidently roused Spurs, who proceeded to show tremendous form for the rest of the match. Walters gets the equaliser. From now on, nothing can stop them. Before half-time, Spurs take the lead through Bennett. Crossing over, one down, Sunderland fight for a comeback, but in vain. 20 minutes from the end, Walters nets a rebound to make it 3-1 for Spurs. Presently, they get a fourth, this time by Medley. And they haven't finished yet. Just before time, Bennett makes it 5-1.
In the push-and-run team were Eddie Bailey, Ted Ditchburn, Alf Ramsey and a wing half called Bill Nicholson.
We found, when the team was going over the top, that there was more to this push and run than appeared on the surface. You have got to have good vision. You've got to have good movement off the ball. You've got to have excellent anticipation. You've got to be able to pass the ball first time with accuracy. And even though we had good players afterwards, we could never maintain that push and run which the 1950-51 side had maintained.
So Nicholson the player became Nicholson the coach, and in 1958, Nicholson the manager, building his team around arguably the most influential player ever to wear the Tottenham shirt. To the vision and wisdom of Danny Blanchflower, Nicholson added the mercurial ball play of Scotland's John White. Also from north of the border, to the peal of thunder, came Dave Mackay.
Mackay did so much for Tottenham. When he first came here, he transformed everything. It was remarkable. I can't explain it really, but he came into the training sessions at the first stage and everybody just went, you know, what have we got here? You know, and because everything was so important, everything was dynamic, and there were squabbles galore over goals, whether they were goals or weren't goals, even in five-a-side matches.
This time Mackay decides on the short one. Both the wing halves up in attack now, and another very fine save by Dunlop. And Spurs really piling it on now. Through to Smith, he's got the chance. Shot, one to Allen, and Allen scored!
That goal, engineered by Mackay and Blanchflower, was the first of 115 that Spurs scored in the league alone in their all-conquering double season of 1960-61. They began with 11 straight wins, and among a string of opponents to be overwhelmed and outclassed were Fulham.
Over 20 minutes gone. It's now Allen going down and scores! And Blanchflower, that lovely swinging pass to Dyson, and three Fulham defenders move across there, and Jones gets his head on it. No!
Cliff Jones excelled as Spurs won the championship in a canter. Now they marched on to Wembley and the FA Cup final. Here, Leicester City, reduced to 10 fit men early in the game, could not halt the irresistible force now known simply as Super Spurs. Centre-forward Bobby Smith thumped the first goal past Gordon Banks. And it was the bustling figure of Smith again who laid on the second goal for another Yorkshireman, the little outside left, Terry Dyson. Spurs supporters, always a mixture of the ribald and the rich, saw their club become the first this century to win the cherished double. But amid the celebrations, Tottenham were already thinking ahead to the European Cup and to the bold, inspired signing of Jimmy Greaves, the greatest goalscorer of his generation. Here was the duel to give Spurs their crowning glory. His instinct and impudence worshipped at White Hart Lane. Greaves returned from Italy to score a hat-trick on his Spurs debut against Blackpool. Just 3 of 357 league goals in a dazzling career. 220 for Spurs.
Jimmy was an excellent player. He was an excellent goal scorer. He had a lot more skill than people gave him credit for. He had a lot of good passing ability. But, of course, the most important thing was his ability to get the ball in the net. And I've tried several times since then, even while talking to people like our dealers, to say, look, you get into these positions and yet you can't score. When Jimmy Greaves got into these positions, he didn't try to blast the back of the net out. He seemed to place the ball just inside the post, as if he's making a pass to the stanchion in the back of the net.
Mullery for Spurs. Greaves. Beautiful play. Robbed by Perriman, and Greaves has got the whole field. He's got the whole field to himself. He'll have to beat the defender. He's got the goalkeeper now.
Spurs reached the semi-final of the European Cup in 1962 and met Benfica, the holders. A 3-1 defeat in the first leg in Lisbon left Tottenham with little option.
I said to the lads, look, the one thing we've got to do is to give everything we've got. Because if we lose through playing, you know, a sort of controlled game, so many people are going to say, they can do better than that, they're bloody fitter than that, and they can get involved more. So if we're going to go down, let's go down fighting.
And so they did, on an unforgettable night when North London shook to the strains of Glory, Glory, Hallelujah. Even when Benfica scored first to go 4-1 ahead in the tie, Tottenham stormed back with a typical goal by Smith. But Blanchflower's penalty left them 1 goal short of survival.
Particularly were we disappointed because we would have had a crack at Real Madrid in the final, and I felt that we could have beat Real Madrid in that final.
Instead, Spurs reached the FA Cup final at Wembley for the 2nd year running. This time their opponents were Burnley, and the man who made it his business to score in his first match of any type, number 10 Jimmy Greaves, took just 3 minutes to pierce their defence. Burnley managed to equalise, but not to contain a rampant Tottenham. It was John White, the ghost they called him, who laid on the 2nd goal for Smith. And later, Blanchflower stroked in a penalty to keep Spurs' hold on the cup. It was a passport back into Europe, into the Cup Winners' Cup this time. There were more dramatic floodlight matches in London N17. But nothing as satisfying for Spurs as the final in Rotterdam in May 1963. This became known as Dyson's match. His extraordinary goal put Spurs 3-1 in front just when Atletico Madrid had fought their way back. And in the absence of the injured Mackay, Dyson drove Spurs to a 5-1 victory.
This is Dyson. Smith moving up on the right wing, he's cutting in, he's calling for the ball. But Dyson's got it over! He's got it over with 3 minutes to go.
But Spurs' greatest team lasted only 3 years. The trophies they carried exultantly down the Tottenham High Road were won by a side dependent on 3 exceptional players, and within a year, Nicholson lost them all. Danny Blanchflower, 38 and plagued by knee trouble. Dave Mackay, who twice broke a leg. And most tragic of all, John White, struck dead by lightning while he sheltered under a tree on a golf course. Mackay recovered to captain Spurs to the FA Cup in 1967. The team now included Jennings, England and Gilzean. But it was a 15-year-old schoolboy in the crowd, about to sign apprentice forms, who would be the next Tottenham captain to receive the FA Cup.
I joined in the summer of 67, I think it was. And I'd been at the club for about 3 or 4 days when I was asked to take part in a television programme. kids programme explaining the life of an apprentice professional, and I'd only been at it 3 or 4 days. And the opening shot was me surrounded by Gilly Greaves, Dave Mackay, Mike England, Pat Jennings, Sean Knowles, and it was an unbelievable experience, and something I couldn't quite live down, because there was other apprentices who had been there for 2 or 3 years, and they deserved to be on the programme, but I was put up, obviously, because I'd just left school and I'd played for England schoolboys.
Spurs reached 4 cup finals in Perryman's first 4 years as a regular. The UEFA Cup was clinched against Wolves in 1972 by the powerful Martin Chivers. But this and 2 League Cups still left Nicholson the perfectionist short of the swaggering standards he'd set. He resigned in 1974 and Terry Neal had 2 years as Spurs manager. But it was Keith Birkinshaw who had to shoulder the burden of relegation in 1977 after selling Pat Jennings. But the new manager was made of strong stuff. Promotion after just 1 year was celebrated by Spurs on Southampton's ground, but it was consolidated in Buenos Aires. There, Birkinshaw clinched the signing of Ricky Villa and Argentina's midfield player Osvaldo Ardiles, players in keeping with the purest tradition of Tottenham Hotspur.
3 minutes to go. Villa for Spurs. No score in the match so far. Number 7, Ardiles. It's there! The Argentinian has done it!
The first thing, I liked them as footballers, and our dealers at the time, of course, had been on television a lot, and he'd excited everybody's imagination in England, and just to have the chance to go out there and talk to him, whether I got him or not, was a thrill in itself. But to pull off the deal where I got both of them back in England, well, really, I couldn't believe my luck at the time.
And Spurs' own finest modern product was now approaching his prime.
There's Huddle! Oh, smash it! Oh, it's a brilliant goal!
The signing in 1980 of Steve Archibald and Garth Crooks gave Spurs the thrust they'd lacked since the days of Greaves and Gilzean. With these two responding to Hoddle's prompting, Spurs were on their way to Wembley.
Crooks is going through here. Oh, he's outpaced them. Crooks is there. Oh, yes! Number 2 for Crooks. Number 2 for Tottenham. And a magnificent ball by Glenn Hoddle.
Here's Villa. Villa's shot! That semi-final victory over Wolves, opponents who seem to have punctuated Tottenham's history, took Spurs into the 100th FA Cup final. Their opponents, Manchester City. Here's Ranson. Oh, and a flying header and a brilliant goal. Tommy Hutchison on the ground. And that was Hoddle. Oh, Hutchison, it's in! Tommy Hutchison has scored at both ends, if you call it an own goal. But sadder even than Hutchison was the substituted Ricky Villa.
I feel very depressed, really, because when you're off the pitch, you can't play, and this is terrible for any player, and I believe my chance to win the FA Cup is gone, and really I want to cry.
Brilliant. It is Archibald has got a chance. Good save, Ricky Villa! Ricky Villa scored! Ranson with the kick. Miller, Reeves underneath it. And now Hutchison to Mackenzie. Oh, tremendous goal! Steve Mackenzie. On by Reeves to Bennett. Paul Miller trying to check Bennett. Down goes Bennett. Penalty! Penalty! And here comes Reeves, and it's there. Hoddle. Oh, the chance here for Archibald. Crooks! Villa. And still Ricky Villa. What a fantastic run. He scored!
I remember I get the ball, I feel confident this game. I don't know why. I believe I can win the game. When I get the ball, I say, going for a goal. And pass, and I have to pass other one, and then shoot, and the ball is in the net. It was perfect, you know, very pleased.
For the two South Americans, winning the FA Cup was an ambition in itself. But for Spurs as a club, it marked the return to the forefront of English football. There were pressing financial demands on them now, owing to the opening at White Hart Lane of the new West Stand. If Tottenham were to maintain their reputation for colour and style, they needed the revenue from a remarkable 7 appearances at Wembley in the space of 15 months. The modern team matched the double side in at least one respect. They won the FA Cup for the 2nd year in a row. The opponents this time, Queen's Park Rangers.
Away from John Gregory, Graham Roberts, Archibald to his right, he overran it, but still got through. This is Graham Roberts, was he brought down? Penalty! Tony Curry came in behind him. Fenwick was in close attendance, but a penalty has been given, and it was a splendid run by Graham Roberts. Penalty, Hoddle to take. Scores. Never has a penalty been missed in an FA Cup final at Wembley.
More glory for Spurs in their centenary year, and for those who built a glamorous club, a time to reflect.
Well, obviously, as far as football is concerned, it means almost everything, doesn't it, really? Because I can reflect back to being a player with and manager of some of the finest players that have ever been in the game. And naturally, I'm a Tottenham man, obviously. And so, therefore, the first result I look for in any game, in any Saturday, is Tottenham Hotspur's result.
Looking back over all the years that you've been associated with Spurs, either as player, manager, supporter, what do you think the club really means to you?
I like them. They're a great club, and to be associated with them was nice.